So my name's Seth. My technical title is Senior Technical Manager, which could probably mean anything really. Could be in any industry. But essentially I'm a senior technician in the drawing side of things, covering CAD and GIS, Photoshop, modelling. I think it's often said that the strength of my work is my diversity in what I do, because it means that as the industry ebbs and flows, you know, I can pick up new skills and new software, whatever is required. I got into the industry through my Masters in Geographic Information Sciences, which is different to Geographic Information Systems because it was more of a research-based diploma and then Masters. So covered remote sensing, Geographic Information Systems and cartography. So that's where I've got a reasonable appreciation of a lot of design kind of things, and in fact sometimes my technical understanding of design concepts is probably more than people might expect, because we did a lot of detail in cartography. And remote sensing, messing around with satellite imagery was great fun. My Masters was involved a lot of research, so I got to go out in the field, did a lot of work with GPS and you know, messing around in helicopters and ordering satellite photography and all those sorts of things. So it was quite good. But I think the main strength of the university where I was that the geography department was very active in doing work for other departments or for government departments, or they had all kinds of work streams, and I got to work on loads of different projects. And that's, I think, one of my skills with the diversity of what I can do came from, because you know, my supervisor would go, hey, I've just picked up this contract for mapping ocean currents using grapefruit that have been dropped from a boat, and we've got all this data, and can you somehow figure out how to make something out of it? And you know, I go, oh yeah, sure. And you know, that's I think partly where my problem solving comes from is that, and that was great for me because I loved it. But one of the main projects was a virtual reality project for a local museum, because they had the bright idea of building a new museum on the empty bit of land that had a really good view in the city. Turns out the reason that the land was empty was because there was an old fort there. So it was sort of to counterbalance the fact that they were building on a lot of the land for the old fort, they decided to make a virtual reality recreation of the fort, so people could go in and see what it was like at the various stages of the fort. And so I built this 3D model in virtual reality, and which meant that we could control all the seasonal things. So we could do fly-throughs, but we could change it, you know, through different seasons, and we could show the fort being developed over the years and at different stages, because you know, it was as forts tend to be. At one point it was occupied by the French, at one point it was occupied by the English, and there were various changes and lots of historical importance there. So that was a good project, and it's probably how I ended up working in the urban design, architecture, landscape industry, development industry, whatever you want to call it, because when I came back from Canada, I was working in a local garden centre driving a forklift truck, and when I was at the pub one night with one of my buddies, and he said, oh, that guy in the urban team, they're looking for someone that can do like 3D modelling and stuff. I was like, well, I could, you know, I could probably do that. And I ended up there, and I never really got into doing the urban design side of things, but I took very well to the CAD side of things. All right. And they'd never heard of GIS before, So whenever they were doing constraints plans of things, they would go on to Magic, a website that gives you a kind of a really rough constraints drawing, and they'd screen grab it and then they'd redraw it all in Photoshop. So they'd end up redrawing, you know, all of the ancient woodland parcels or all of these things across the whole site. And so I sort of started off, I was like, I think there might be a better way of doing this. And that's kind of been a lot of what I've done in my career, is going, well, hang on a minute, it's difficult at times because you can't just like go and go, you don't know what you're doing, but is saying, hey, I think we could try this. Whatever it may be, rather than just emailing it and going, here it is, I generally try and go and sit with them and talk them through what I've done and how it might have been done differently. So say, I've done it like this on this occasion, but you know, if the site was bigger, then I might, you know, that something else might be more appropriate. Or I've noticed such and such a thing on this site, I've noticed you've got flooding, did you want me to include the flooding data and maybe look at see if I can get the bathymetry, or you know, or whatever is relevant. And even though they might not want it on that particular project, it gets people thinking that, you know, there's a lot of things out there. Like we don't tend to use census information very much, partly because it's a bit of a pain and often it's not detailed enough for the work that we do. But there are times when it could be relevant and it could be useful and could help paint a picture. So it's sort of keeping it in people's mind that those sort of things are available, so that they actually think about it. And it's often just because all it needs is someone to think, I'll go and speak to Seth, because they're not going to know the ins and outs of what's available. And
gadgets and technical things, I suppose, from childhood, is that right? But then you went into education?
Yeah, so I grew up on a farm,
Yeah.
So it's always been logical to be involved in equipment, machinery, tinkering with stuff. You know, it was tinkering with bikes from an early age, and building things. So I've always carried on that as a hobby for one reason or other. It just seems, I think it's traditional for farmers that you make do, or you bodge things, and bodging things, you know, it goes from bodging something to then making something much better, as you know, as you get the ability to get better tools and equipment and all these sorts of things, to be able to do those things much, like you say, in a much more refined way. And you know, nowadays, like 3D printing, it really blew my mind, because you know, all of the problems that there are a lot of things that are off the shelf solutions to, but they're not always how I would want them, because I do have a certain amount of design eye and like problem solving. So I mean, I've done a lot of things on bikes where, you know, a bracket isn't the way I want it, or I can use I've made a little storage holder which I could probably get. So this is a load of prototypes I made for a tool holder to hold particularly stuff for fixing punctures in the head tube of a bike. And there's nothing nothing sensibly priced on the market, and it takes advantage of a particular style of bike. So I designed that up in CAD, prototyped it up, developed it a bit because I realised that takes a really long time to print and is a bit of a pain. And why print all of that when these things are around all over the place, and you can have something that fits like that. So one of my bikes has one of these and that hidden away, and it's a, you only see the top, and the top, although it's 3D printed in a prototype style, is tidy enough that most people wouldn't even know it was there. So I was quite chuffed with that. That is someone else's design that I just printed to see how well it worked, and it didn't work very well. But that's different. That's a GPS mount. So yeah, I mean, it all seems. Some people are surprised, like when I. Some of the things on my bike, they go, what on earth is that? I'm like, a mount that I 3D printed. And they go, why don't you make them commercially available? I'm not a salesman. If I get into those sorts of things, then I've got to be a salesman, and I just solving my problem, and there might be thousands of other people that have the same problem, but
that doesn't excite you.
I don't like sales, which is reflects in my professional career as well. Is that I try and go softly. I don't like telling people how awesome I am. I will try and slowly get the idea that
demonstrate.
Yeah. I like my work to do the talking, and hopefully by trying to do good work and innovative work when I get the opportunity, I get hopefully get that respect and just that thing in people's head that goes, I'll ask Seth because he might have an idea how to do it.